Games rated E to M. Welcome to Nintendo Power Podcast. In this 50th episode, we talk about our time playing Mario Strikers Battle League, recommend some other fun Nintendo Switch games, and pick future favorites. My name is Chris, and this episode I'm joined by Ruth from Nintendo Treehouse. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Chris.
And Jason from the communications team at Nintendo of America. Hi, Jason.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show again. Now, we have a game coming out in just a couple of days that I think a lot of people are excited about, and that's Mario Strikers Battle League. And I remember having a lot of fun with Super Mario Strikers on Nintendo GameCube and then Mario Strikers Charged on Wii, but those games came out a long time ago, so I was super excited to have a chance to play the new Mario Strikers Battle League with you both a few days ago. And I've been looking forward to talking to you more about it, so should we just jump right into it?
Let's kick it off.
Let's do it.
Awesome. All right, now, right around the time we got together to play, the Mario Strikers Battle League First Kick demo became available in Nintendo eShop, and I think anyone who went through that demo will know that this game has a lot of moves and techniques to learn and master. And Ruth, this ties into something that we talked about while playing, which is that this game is easy to pick up and play, but there's a lot of depth here for people to master over time. So to start with, I'd like to go over the main gameplay elements and share some personal takes on each one of them. And Ruth, you've played the game a lot, so it'd be great if you could give us more of an advanced perspective on some of these techniques and maybe even some tips or some things new players should be thinking about. And then Jason, you're still just getting started with the game, so I'd love to hear how things are starting to click for you after a few games and maybe, some of the things that are working for you or that you've started to focus on. So Ruth, how about we start with you and talk about, let's start with as basic as it gets, moving and shooting, but that also includes dashing, not just your basic shots, but charged shots, and then the ability to aim a shot. Like, what's kind of that all about? How does that all work together? And how should people kind of approach shooting, I guess?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So it's really, the controls of this game are really easy to start off with. So for example, moving around or even taking a shot, passing. These are some of the soccer elements of the game. There's also tackling, and different variations of tackling, which are the basic moves in this game. So we have the soccer elements and then the battle elements. So for those one-button presses, it's really easy to start and get used to those and start playing. But as you get used to playing more and more, there are a lot of different combinations that you can do with the buttons, and there's a lot of timing-based moves that you can do. I guess some examples of those is you can do a charged tackle, which is a power-upped version of a tackle. So you'll have to use, the timing of your button presses to do a more powerful tackle to charge opponents.
Yeah, that's a great point because so many different actions, and we'll talk more about them individually in a bit, but so many actions in this game, there's like the standard version of it, and then there's like a charged version of it, and then there's like a perfect timed version of it that's even more effective. So it really starts to show you kind of how you can layer in more, kind of beginner to expert, skill levels in how you actually perform these actions.
Yep. So I want to talk more about the timing-based moves. So as I said earlier, there are the timing-based tackles, which you can perform a more powerful tackle by charging up your tackle and releasing your button at the right time to tackle your enemy. There's also a charged up version of the regular shot where you'll press the button, release it at the exact right time to perform a perfectly timed shot. And for shots, you can even aim your shot with the left stick. So that adds another layer of avoiding the defense or avoiding the goalie when you're performing your shot.
Yeah, and it really comes down to a good strategy is when to use the right kind of shot or the right kind of tackle. And Jason, if you've started playing this game, you got a few games under your belt, it can be tough. Like if you just take a basic shot, on goal, chances are it's going to get pretty easily blocked. So what are you finding with some of these moves that Ruth talked about, kind of helps you, get into the flow a little bit better and maybe have some early success?
Yeah, I want to say one of my favorite things in games in general is kind of that moment where you do something cool on accident. And there's a lot of that in my first couple of matches of Mario Strikers Battle League. I think there were points where I was passing across the field and then being able to open up the goal a little bit more and getting by Boom Boom. Obviously, getting to score feels great, but having those moments where things like you mentioned earlier start to click and stop being accident, and you start to kind of really grasp the controls. Lob passes are a big one for me. I think the last match I started to kind of wrap my head around that a little more, and the kind of strategic element they provide, as well as just manipulating the flow of the characters on the field. It's definitely hard to get by a Bowser in your way, but being able to kind of get characters shuffling around and throwing the goalie off center, that's probably my favorite thing now that I kind of have a better view of the game overall. Kind of stepping back even farther and seeing how you can kind of control the players on the field and what those advantages offer has been probably the most rewarding as I'm past my fourth match now or so.
For sure. And, as you were describing that scenario of trying to get past a Bowser, it made me realize that there's a lot that comes down to these one-on-one character matchups. And I was thinking, how would you get past a Bowser? Because he is such a strong character and he has such strong tackles, but he's also a slow character, right? Generally speaking. And you can augment things with gear a little bit here or there, and we'll get into that more later. But if you've got a fast character or maybe a character with a strong technique, then maybe that kind of starts to, let you know how that particular character could get past a Bowser if they're in their way. So maybe, Ruth, if you could talk a little bit more about some of the things that you're thinking about, when you're in those types of matchups, and then also, even if you're at a disadvantage, with a little bit of extra skill in some of these techniques, like maybe a dodge or something like that, or a perfectly timed move. You could still manage to overcome a situation even if you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah, so to talk about the character matchups to start, like Jason said earlier, it might be hard to get out around a Bowser just because he's so strong, and better at tackling because he has a strong strength attribute. For characters like this, you can go against them by pairing them with another strong character. So it might be a little bit more difficult to tackle because strong characters are also more resistant to tackles. You could also get past a Bowser by using, for example, a Toad or a different fast character. And even if it isn't a fast character or a character with strong strength, you can use some of the tactics, such as there's dashing. You can also use feints that are really useful to get around characters like this.
Yeah, and even if you say, you know what, I'm the weakest character on the field, but I just feel like I want to really sock it to Bowser. It's not that you can't tackle him; it's just harder, right? Like if you had a perfectly timed charge tackle, or something like, or maybe a team tackle, which we haven't talked about yet, but where you essentially tackle one of your own players to kind of knock them into an opponent. Those deal so much more stun damage that you could still kind of measure up to a stronger character in those types of situations, just with a little bit of extra strategy and skill, right?
Yeah, you're right. So with a regular tackle, if you try to tackle someone like a Bowser with a weaker character, Bowser would not get knocked down at all. But if you use a charge tackle and release the button at just the right time to make that into a perfect charge tackle, you'll be able to knock down any character. And it's the same with a team tackle, which Chris just explained, that you charge tackle into your teammate and eventually hit an opponent. In the same way, you can knock down any character with any character.
Yeah, I love that. I love that there's that ability there. And I've messed around with this a lot after we played our games together in the demo tutorial when it was available. Just really trying to get that perfect timing down. And it really showed me that there's a lot of room for me to kind of build that muscle memory and learn that timing and skill, almost as if I were practicing in a fighting game or something. And I look forward to playing this game online a lot, over a long, long period of time. And I started to see that hill I'm about to climb, right? Where I know where I'm starting, but I know there's so much room for me to improve, even if you kind of know what all the buttons do, just really using them to their best. And, Jason, as you've started to play, because, I've played a couple games with you guys, but you'd played actually before me. So now that you've played even more, are you starting to maybe, perfect any of those techniques, or at least starting to kind of pull them off intentionally more often?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot about skill floor and skill ceiling in games, especially competitive natured games, and Mario Strikers Battle League is no different. I think, as you mentioned and Ruth spoke about, there is definitely a pretty low skill floor. It is easy for people to pick up and play, and I found myself having a blast even in my first match, while Ruth and a few other members of the Treehouse were kind of doing circles around me and a few of my colleagues from the comms team. But as I've kind of wrapped my head around it a bit more, it's not just being able to execute a shot on a goal well. There's a lot more going on. I think we've mentioned kind of the ankle-breaking style of arcade gameplay that comes through, and being able to kind of outplay your opponent, whether it's a CPU or one of your friends. But there's also the really high-level tactics like team tackling, like you mentioned, the ability to really stick it to a Donkey Kong or a Bowser with, say, a Toad and a Yoshi lining up their perfect team tackle. That's incredibly satisfying. Also, I think we had mentioned the goalie Boom Boom. It's always CPU controlled, and so there are a few things you can do, and Ruth taught me this, that you can influence how Boom Boom is ready or not ready to stop your shots. So, crossing the ball up the field, down the field, or having a nice charge shot. Those are all ways that you can kind of manipulate that and turn the tide a little bit more in your favor.
Yeah, and you start thinking, like, you get a few shots blocked by Boom Boom at the goal, and you're like, well, what can I do differently to get the ball past him? And you start thinking about everything at your disposal, like you kind of touched on, right? Like you can do a combo pass, so that you're passing it to your player and kind of actually hitting the shot button before they receive it, so they're taking that shot on goal the instant the ball gets to them. Then you can also kind of aim, right? So if you're aiming toward one side of the goal or the other when you shoot, you can try to aim that to which side looks the most open. And then even beyond that, if you were doing a combo shot, for example, if you timed it perfectly, you get that extra little boost. So you start to put together all these things, and then you have to take into consideration just the stats of your character who's taking the shot. Like, do they have a very strong kind of a natural scoring ability? Is it maybe even being boosted further by some gear? So you really start to see how, on a surface level, you're just kind of hitting a button to take a shot. But if you start pulling off some of these more advanced techniques or taking some of these other things into consideration, it starts to become a very deep game, even just taking out that one little piece of it, just the shot on goal. And then speaking of shots on goal, I think people will have seen in trailers and commercials some of the most stunning moments in a game from Mario Strikers Battle League is the hyper shots, which is a very stylized kind of shot. So Ruth, do you want to tell us a little bit about that shot and how you can actually perform one?
Yeah, these are called hyper strikes, and they are the special, unique shot for each character. And the way you actually perform them is during the game, randomly, an orb called a strike orb can appear within the field, and the team members will run around to get that strike orb. You just have to run into it, and once the team receives the strike orb, they'll have a certain amount of time where they're in a hyped up state. And you can see that because they'll be illuminated on the screen. And during that hyped up state, if they have the ball and can perform a shot by pressing the A button down to charge it, performing a shot and charging it enough, they will activate a hyperstrike. And after a hyperstrike is activated, you'll have a timing-based button press that you have to go through. So you'll want to get this timing perfectly in the blue zone as the cursor moves across the screen. And if you are able to get the timing right, you can score 2 points with this hyperstrike. And each of the characters has a unique stylistic animation, kind of comic style animation for each shot. And you'll get to see each character's personality really prominent in these shots. But if the timing is not fully right, the ball might get blocked by the goalie, Boom Boom, as Jason said earlier. Boom Boom might block the ball. And if the ball does not go into the goal, you'll not get any points at all. So it's either 0 or 2 points, but having these 2 points will really change the tables in the game.
I love that moment when you're charging up a hyperstrike because, like you said, you have to charge it for a little bit, which leaves your player vulnerable, and then you're also focusing on getting the timing of that meet. Kind of brings the whole thing to a quick end. So you really have to, find an open teammate, find someone who's got a little bit of space, or maybe have your teammates help defend you and kind of block for you while that's happening. And then, like you said, depending on how perfectly and precisely you nail the timing of that meter swing, once Boom Boom
turbo gear and the turbo head might raise your speed by 2, but it's going to decrease your another stat by 2 as well. So there's no gear that you can just purchase a bunch of and make all of your character's stats high. Instead, it's more of a strategy of, either balancing out your character's stats or making them strong in a certain stat. And you'll want to think about that based on how your characters naturally are. For example, you could raise someone like Rosalina, who has a strong shooting stat, to have the highest shooting stat. Or you could use gear in a different way on Rosalina to kind of balance her stats to make her more of a roundabout character.
Yeah, and I think when I was playing, I found myself really trying to, or I guess the way to say it is I appreciated it when I could find a character who was faster and I could really run up the field and kind of avoid certain encounters. So maybe the gear you choose really could appeal to your own individual play style. Like if you know that you're going to play this way normally, what kind of gear can you pick that's going to enhance your natural play style? So for me, maybe if I would focus more on speed, just because that's the way that I tend to naturally play. Jason, what about you? Have you used much gear so far? And if so, did you notice it having an impact in your play?
Yes. I played mostly Wario. I want to say of the 4 or 5 matches I've played, I think I chose Wario for all of them but one. And there are obvious benefits to Wario being a stronger character, being a little harder to muscle around. One of the things I really love about this style of play in Mario Strikers Battle League is it's kind of twofold. So the way I play defense is offensively. I try to be as in-your-face and obnoxious as possible. And with Wario, that's not hard because you can kind of belly bump into people or butt bump them to, launch them into the arena edge, which is electrified, and we'll take them out for a little bit, or just knock them onto the ground. But on the flip side, if I'm playing offense, I play defensive offense, where, especially with CPUs, every mistake that happens is someone else's fault, not mine. But to get back to gear, I think the wonderful thing about it is to Ruth's point earlier, you're able to kind of turn your favorite character into something that fits your play style or can counter your opponent a little more handily than just saying, all right, I'm Toad, I'm very small, I'm very fast, and that's it for me. There are ways to kind of help elevate the characters in different ways that aren't, necessarily part of their kit to begin with.
Definitely. That sounds like something I'm going to really enjoy digging into more. I didn't take advantage of it too much in our first few matches as I was learning the ropes, but if for no other reason than a lot of the gear looks really cool, I want to find the perfect set for me. All right, so before we go, one thing we haven't really covered off on is just all the different modes that this game has, especially all the different ways you can play online. So, Ruth, would you mind walking us through some of those options?
Sure thing. So we have 4 major modes in this game. The first one is called Quick Battle Mode, and this is the mode that lets you play individual matches. You can decide what kind of settings you want. For example, for competitive types, you could turn off the items and hyper strikes if you want to do that. You can play with 1 to 8 people on the same system or online or through local wireless. And the second major mode is called Cup Battle Mode. And Cup Battle Mode is a tournament mode where you and up to 3 other people can play together on the same team, on the same system, through tournaments against CPU-controlled teams. And each of these tournaments are themed based on the sets of gear. So as you go forward in these tournaments, as you advance in the tournaments, the opponent teams will be wearing more and more and more of that certain gear. So for example, as I said earlier, the turbo gear has a very high, raises the speed stats. So when you're going against teams in the Turbo Cup or your club's stadium, which you'll be taking to every match you're going to. So you'll always have your home stadium. And the last mode is the gear settings mode. So this mode is where you're going to go in and redeem the gear that you want, equip it, and look at all your characters and kind of think about how you want to assemble your dream team.
That's awesome. And Jason, I think you mentioned this before, but I'm definitely aligned with you and wanting to tackle that tournament mode because I think that'll be a good place to kind of like hone your skills. And it sounds like the different kind of approach and focus on different kind of attributes, like Ruth mentioned with the turbo gear set in the one tournament would be a great way to kind of teach you kind of how to overcome different types of challenges. So it almost like a strategic element there in a way, but also just a good way to kind of settle in and learn the ropes maybe before you go online and play some club battles and things like that. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I want to say, personally, after my handful of matches, I think I've played one where I was controlling solo, and so I had a greater degree of control over the rest of my teammates. So I was able to switch pretty quickly back and forth between the 4 playable characters versus playing on a team. You add other humans into the mix, and it becomes a little harder to predict unless your teamwork is really strong. And so I think something that has helped and I look forward to being able to do when I'm playing the game is, engaging.
But also a couple of things that Ruth, I think you touched on that I didn't mention before. Items, obviously, items are a huge part of the game. I mean, what kind of competitive Mario-themed game would be complete without shells kicking around, invincibility stars, and things like that? So that can really change up the way the action flows, can it?
It really can. There's a lot of strategy that you can put in with the items, but how they work is that each team has their own pool of items, and everyone on the same team will share when and how they'll use the items. So it is really important to, when you're on a team with other people, to kind of communicate and strategize in how you use your items. And because there are some things that you like, really good timings that you can use your items. Like for example, when an opponent is coming up to tackle you, you can use a green shell or red shell to knock them down and then perform a shot right then. So it's really important to save the items for the right moment and use them strategically.
A well-timed bomb is devastating.
It's so fun when you're the one that sent it out, but not so much if you're on the receiving end. Well, there's so much more I could talk about this game for forever, but is there anything else we should cover on before we move on?
I guess my kind of closing thought is the thing that I found really endearing as someone who has, run the gamut of a lot of Mushroom Kingdom and Mario sports titles from even back on the Nintendo 64. I still find the way that personality of the characters comes through to be far and away the most endearing thing. If you are the one who scores, for instance, Wario, he'll just pull out a giant piece, like a chunk of garlic, a big clove of garlic, and will just chomp that thing whole and kind of blow into the camera, which is focused on him. So that's just one tease, but it seems like each character has a couple of those. But it's not even just necessarily those focused, authored moments. It's
first, I'm going to pick up the game. I'm going to go through that tutorial mode again to make sure that I have all of the moves down, and then go into the more competitive settings. Just wanted to mention that mode.
That's a great point and a great tip. And like I said, I went through the tutorial and the demo that had been released, and that was hugely instructional for me, but I imagine a refresher would be great too, especially as I start to certain techniques start to become secondhand, and I start to build that muscle memory. Then I would need to go kind of remind myself about what that next level of techniques are, so that I can keep building on that. Well, awesome. Those are all great. Thanks so much. Can't wait to play more of this game with you guys and with everyone around the world in just a couple of days here once people get their hands on the game. Had a lot of fun so far, and I'm sure I'm going to have a lot more fun once the game is actually out there. Now we're going to move on to Player's Pulse. And as usual, recently we asked Nintendo fans on Twitter a few questions just for fun. And first off, we asked, in Mario Strikers Battle League, which gear boost will you focus on the most? So Jason, let me start by asking you personally, which boost will you focus on? Now, we only offered 3 as possible options here, not the full set of actual categories, but we said people could choose either speed for better dribbling, or strength, which helps them resist tackles, or shooting power for scoring. So, Jason, which one of those 3 do you think you would probably focus on the most?
I have to say, I would probably go with, I've just been naturally gravitating towards the larger players. And so Donkey Kong and Waluigi are definitely in my sights to play after launch. But I think something that I was finding with Wario was just being outsped by Toad and Yoshi. So kind of building a speed set around a Wario or Donkey Kong could be really interesting. I think that's probably where I'll head first.
Nice. Well, that was the actual #1 vote getter by quite a margin. Actually, no, it was pretty close. Shooting power was a close second, and strength wasn't too far behind, but most people chose speed for better dribbling. We'll see if that holds up once people start playing the game. And then the next question we asked was, which teammate would you rather pass the ball to? Wario, Waluigi, or neither one of them? Ruth, let's say you're out there in the middle of the action. Both Wario and Waluigi look like they might have a shot on goal. Who are you going to? Or are you going to choose option C, whoever that might be?
I guess between Wario and Waluigi, I would probably choose Wario just because I want to see him throwing the ball into the goal.
That's right. Jason mentioned that. That is pretty funny when you see that. It's another reminder that this is a soccer-like sport, but not soccer. And the leading vote getter on this one actually was Waluigi by quite a margin, which I guess shouldn't be a surprise. Waluigi has a pretty big fan base online, but yeah, me personally, I don't know if I'm going to either one of those guys. They're always, I'm a little suspicious. But I guess if they're on my team, I can trust them. And then the final poll that we proposed to people was, what's your current goal while playing Nintendo Switch Sports Online? Are you focused more on unlocking items or raising your pro rank? Jason, I'm going to start with you, then go to Ruth. If you're playing Nintendo Switch Online right now, which one are you focused on more, unlocking items or raising your pro rank?
I'm a collector through and through, so I gotta go after the items for sure. The rank is just a byproduct, and we don't look at my my D- rank.
All right, Ruth, what about which do you think is more important, unlocking items or raising that rank?
Well, I'm definitely competitive, a very competitive person, so it would be raising my pro rank.
Ah, nice. Luckily, you kind of do both at the same time when you play online. But between the two, the overwhelming fan vote was for unlocking items, which I guess if I had to pick one of the two, I'd pick that one. But I sure do love to see my pro rank go up, even if it's just a little bit. All right, well, great. Thanks to everyone who participated in those polls. Now we're going to move into Nintendo Power Game Club. And as usual, I asked each of you to recommend a game that you've been enjoying and to tell us just a little bit about it. And the games we're going to be talking about this time are the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe from Crows, Mario Party Superstars from Nintendo, and Towerfall from Matt Makes Games. So, Jason, would you like to start? Tell me which game you chose, and I think you might even have a couple of other games to mention. What the game's like, why you dig it, and who you'd recommend it to.
Yeah, absolutely. I did choose the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, a game I enjoyed, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but a decade ago.
Wow.
And I believe I just played it on PC, and it was a really lovely experience. It's very much a self-aware and kind of open-ended experience that kind of begs you to explore alternate options and being subversive to there's kind of a narrator who's telling you as a kind of 9-to-5 worker who you start out at your computer and the narrator kind of dictates what you do and how you move, or you can kind of break, and obviously the natural step forward for a lot of players is to go down the right hallway instead of the left hallway, or whatever the choice is. And that sends you down a whole kind of adventure of choices and again, being subversive or exploring your environment to see what other paths or dialogue you can get. And Ultra Deluxe, the Ultra Deluxe edition of the Stanley Parable recently released and of course came to Nintendo Switch, and so it was a great opportunity to pick it back up. But it was surprising to find that it, while not being like a full Stanley Parable 2, it really ramps up the self-awareness, its position in the game industry for the last 10 years, the narrative, and just everything it did in the original game, it does quite a bit more of in this game. And it's very playful. I highly recommend anyone check it out if you're into kind of lower stakes experiences, but still something that's going to put a smile on your face. And then really quickly, I did want to also mention another game that came to the Nintendo Switch recently that I had played previously, which is Mini Motorways. Really lovely little puzzle game that I think if you have some time, you can kind of build your own interstate in well-known locations, New York, Los Angeles, Beirut, and each turn, you basically get a small amount of road or freeway or bridges, and so you have to kind of build a strategic roadway to get cars to their different destinations, and they're different colored, so you have to kind of link up where those different colored cars go to the different colored locations and whatnot. But I guess my theme overall was games that I had played previously that have recently released on Switch that I still really enjoy. So definitely check out the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe and Mini Motorways.
Awesome. Sounds like very good recommendations. I haven't played either one of those, so I'm going to try to check those out. And then Ruth, I think you've said you've been playing Mario Party Superstars.
Yes, I have been playing Mario Party Superstars. So I guess what Mario Party Superstars is, for those who are not aware, this is a Mario game Mario Party series game, which combines 100 mini games from past Mario Party games, as well as boards from past Nintendo 64 Mario Party games. So it's a compilation of everyone's or my nostalgia, basically, in a Mario Party package. And what I really like about this game is that, well, my first console was a Nintendo 64, and the first game that I played was Mario Party 2. So Mario Party 2 and 3 are in a very special place in my heart, and I really like to go in and play Mario Party Superstars and replay the mini games that I used to play back in middle school. And there's also an online component available to all of the modes. So I can go in and play with friends that I don't live next door to anymore, and really relive that nostalgia.
That's great. I've heard a lot of people who played those classic Mario Party games on Nintendo 64 really talk about exactly what you said, the nostalgia of revisiting those games. I'm someone who actually, for whatever reason, kind of missed the Mario Party series back when it first started and didn't come to it until like it was on later systems. So for me, it just felt like Mario Party Superstars just felt like a brand new game, and I've really, really enjoyed it, especially seeing how they've enhanced, basically rebuilt all the stages to look, with the modern graphics and things like that. So that's been my Mario Party game of choice with me and my kids here for the past while since it came out. I've been having a lot of fun with that one. And then the game that I want to recommend this time is Towerfall. I think a certain number of people out there have probably heard about this game. I know it has a pretty hardcore fan base. It's been around for a while. I've been around on Nintendo Switch for a while. But I think a lot of newer players or players who maybe weren't as engaged with the Nintendo Switch a few years ago might have missed it. And it's just so fun. It's one that I just bring out. It's like a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe or a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. If I've got a lot of people coming over, or just my son and I, we've kind of played this game endlessly. We'll pull that game out and have at it. It was created, first of all, by the makers of Celeste, which a lot of people remember as being like a real Game of the Year title a few years ago on Nintendo Switch. You can play up to 1 to 6 players simultaneously, all kind of on the same screen, and everyone shoots arrows. So you're basically running around the screen shooting arrows at each other, and you lose the round if you get hit even once. And you have a limited number of arrows, so you can shoot off a bunch, miss people, try to pick them back up, and rounds tend to go by very fast, and you go through a lot of them to determine the winner of a complete series. And I really like this game because it's just so easy and fun to pick up and get into, and it's a great party game. But there's a lot of depth too, so you're learning offensive and defensive strategies, positioning. You can actually dash through the air and catch arrows out of midair, it's just, again, one of those great pick up and play games. It's almost just as fun for a crowd of people to watch as it is for you to play, especially when you get into those really stressful moments. If it's a close series of rounds and you're getting into sudden death and you're trying to out kind of play mind games with the other player to try to trick them into walking into your shot. It's just a ton of fun. So definitely anybody who hasn't checked it out before, it's out there, and it's a great indie title. And also this time we went online and asked some fans to recommend some of their favorite games that they've been playing recently. And we got a lot of great responses, and I'm just going to share 3 of them here really quick. First of all, Skylar picked Pac-Man Museum Plus. And they said that it's a really fun collection of older games from the series, including some that were originally exclusive to the Wii system. And it's a great way to get new people into the series and experience some of its lesser-known games for the first time. And I have to say, this one really flew under my radar. I didn't realize it had just come out. To mind wipe myself and go back and play that game again for the very first time. And of course, anyone can play it in the Nintendo 64 collection of games that comes with a Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack membership. So, anybody else out there who may not have played that game before, definitely follow Nick's example and give it a look, because it's one of the greats. And then finally, Leo Unlimited said, I got into Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition in preparation for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 this summer. It has a fun and engaging battle system, and the casual mode allows me to enjoy the story at my own pace. And I'm super excited about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 too, and revisiting some of the past games in that series before the new game hits on July 29th sounds like a great idea. I think my saves for every Xenoblade Chronicles game that I have still have a ton of side missions to complete, so there's a lot there for me to go back and work on. All right, now we're going to move on to the Warp Zone quiz. And in honor of this actually being the 50th episode of Nintendo Power Podcast, this time the quiz questions will all be about games that were featured in past episodes of the podcast. So longtime listeners might actually have a little advantage here. All right, you guys ready?
Ready.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so question number 1, the clues are, for the final episode of the show each year, we ask players to vote for their favorite game from that year. And last year, the winner of the 2021 Players Game of the Year was a long-awaited 2D side-scrolling sequel in a famous Nintendo franchise in which a famous hunter, 35 from January of 2021, our guests discussed the latest game in a series of popular multiplayer-focused action RPGs that added a new gameplay mechanic called Wire Action and a canine companion called Palamute to the franchise, and which will receive a huge DLC expansion this month. Can either of you guess the publisher or the game?
I'll do both. It is
All right.
it is Capcom's Monster Hunter Rise.
That's right. Absolutely. And Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak DLC comes out on June 30th. Looking forward to that. All right, 2 for 2 so far. Question 3. The clues are, this Nintendo game was featured the most on the podcast. It actually headlined 4 different episodes. And on each of those episodes, we focused on a new addition to a lineup that eventually landed at a whopping 82 playable characters for this game. Any guesses as to what this game is? Another podcast tie-in here. This game was actually voted as our very first Players Game of the Year in 2018. And any guesses? I got one more clue if you need it.
I believe we are talking about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
That is exactly right. The next clue was going to be a dead giveaway. I was going to say that the last character that was added was Sora from Kingdom Hearts. So well done.
That might have sent me down the Kingdom Hearts spiral. So it's better that we stop there.
Nice. All right. So those were the main questions. We just have one last bonus question. And this is the audio question. This game was featured in the very first episode of the podcast way back in December of 2017. Can you guess what this game is by this sound effect? And I'm going to play it twice, so if you know the answer right away, please hold on until I've played it twice. Here we go. All right, any guesses as to what this sound is from? Another clue, we were joined that episode by the game's producer, Mr. Aonuma, and its director, Mr. Fujibayashi. And I'll say that this is the sound that plays when you obtain various items in the game, so you hear it a lot. And you know, since the podcast launched the same year as Nintendo Switch, this sound comes from one of the earliest and biggest Nintendo Switch games.
Ruth, do you know?
I think
I'll give another clue. I'm very familiar with it because of the vast collection of amiibo on my desk from this title and series.
Is it The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild?
That is exactly right. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Well done. Great team. Every single question answered correctly.
Virtual high five.
I would expect nothing less for this 50th anniversary, or not so much 50th anniversary, 50th episode of the podcast. Awesome. So now we're going to move on to Game Forecast. And before we go, we're just going to take a quick look at some of the Nintendo Switch games that either released recently or are coming soon. Starting, I've heard a lot about that game and I haven't played it yet, so I'm looking forward to trying this one.
Same. I've heard only good things about it, and I've never tried to play it at all. So I'm really excited.
With Mario Party Superstars being your kind of go-to right now, you'll be quite in the mood for all of the party game shenanigans it has to offer.
That makes me even more excited.
Hey, you can never have enough party game shenanigans. Jason, what about you? What are you looking forward to from this list?
You know, in my head, I knew how packed the next month and a half are, but just hearing you list everything off, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But I have to...
And that's just a sample, right?
Yeah,
that's not even
that's
the
not
full list.
everything. I have to say my standout, though, is Sonic Origins. I was a huge fan of those games growing up, and having them all in one package that is wrapped up in the same way that the Sonic Mania game was treated. I absolutely adored that art style and seeing that kind of come to life in a new way, but still getting some of like the deco flavor and it really sent me back to childhood and again seeing the Origins games come together. And being able to play as any of the characters in any of the games, or at least I think Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails in each of the main 3 games. It's super exciting to me, and I'm really looking forward to it. Especially, they have a whole bunch of additional scoring and trials and things like that are built in. So I'm definitely looking to step up my game a bit when it comes to showing my younger self up.
Yeah, that one definitely looks good. It looks like a real love letter to those old Sonic games. And I'll add on to that Klonoa Fantasy Reverie series. I think the Klonoa platforming games are great. It's been way too long since I played one. They're just full of charm and fun platforming type puzzles. You can, grab bad guys and then toss them around. And then Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course. Finally I'm going to be able to get my hands on this DLC because that game is just amazing. And then, of course, Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 are going to be really big titles for me. So, and I could make this list, easily twice as long. There's so many games on there that I'm definitely interested in. So, like we were saying, pretty good lineup, and that's it for this episode. Ruth and Jason, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
That's it for the 50th episode of Nintendo Power Podcast. If you have any comments or questions you'd like us to consider answering on the show, you can email us at nintendopowerpodcast@noa.nintendo.com. Also, we always appreciate it if you can leave a review, and be sure to subscribe so you get new episodes as soon as they're ready. Thanks for listening, and keep playing with power.